Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a wild decade of financial shakeups, aggressive acquisitions, and major geographical shifts in the global coatings industry. If you want to understand exactly how market dominance is built and lost in today's industrial landscape, well, you're in the right place. We are going to look at the hard data from 2015 to 2025 to see how the balance of power has completely rewired itself.
Okay, let's just dive right into this staggering number. $88.5 billion. Think about that for a second. That is the combined 2025 sales revenue of the top 10 global coatings companies. We're looking at a massive 35% growth compared to just 10 years prior. And what this tells us right out of the gate is a pretty brutal truth about today's business environment. The big guys are only getting bigger. Industry resources, client channels, capital, it's all rapidly centralizing into the hands of a few top-tier players.
And honestly, the biggest power handover in the last decade perfectly illustrates this. Back in 2015, PPG was sitting incredibly comfortably at the global #1 spot with $14.3 billion in sales. Sherwin-Williams, they were in 4th place back then, pulling in less than half of PPG's revenue. But fast forward to 2025, and Sherwin-Williams has violently dethroned PPG to take that #1 spot globally, hitting an incredible $18.4 billion in sales. So you've got to ask, how exactly did they nearly triple their revenue and jump from 4th to 1st?
Well, that brings us to strategy 1, aggressive acquisitions.
Look, to dominate the global market today, companies literally had to open their checkbooks. These industry giants didn't just grow organically, right? They bought their way to the top. In 2017, Sherwin-Williams made a move that changed the entire landscape forever by acquiring Valspar. That one single acquisition caused their volume to absolutely explode, and they spent the next few years integrating industrial coatings and architectural channels. Meanwhile, Nippon Paint was running the exact same playbook. They swallowed up Dulux Group in 2020 and later snapped up companies like the German brand Botek.
The sheer scale of Nippon Paint's strategy is just a perfect example of this. By essentially buying their way up the ladder over the past 10 years, they skyrocketed from the 12th spot globally all the way to #4. They broke the $10.4 billion mark. I mean, that is a staggering 352% growth rate over 10 years. It absolutely proves that the global coatings industry has firmly entered the era of massive capital consolidation.
But there's another piece to the puzzle. Strategy 2, the APAC engine.
See, the second distinct path to massive growth wasn't just about buying up competitors, but hyper-focusing on the Asia-Pacific region. Just consider J&T. They are one of the most phenomenal growth stories of the entire decade. Back in 2015, they were ranked 35th globally, pulling in just over $500 million in sales. But by 2025, they crashed right into the global top 10. Their core engine for this explosive growth was deeply cultivating the Asia-Pacific market, totally tapping into the insatiable demand coming out of China and Southeast Asia. And we saw similar trends with Asian paints jumping from 11th to 8th and KCC moving from 37th to 16th. The logic is exactly the same.
The bottom line here is absolutely crucial. You cannot win the global market without winning Asia, period. Mature markets in Europe and America are experiencing really slow growth right now. The real massive incremental growth is happening in the East. I mean, China alone now accounts for nearly 1/3 of all global coatings production volume. The sheer scale of that market serves as the foundational engine driving both regional and global industry growth.
But that naturally leads us to our next point, the fall of traditional giants. So, what happens to the old guard who completely missed out on these critical strategies? Well, the data offers a pretty harsh reality check. Relying on mature European markets is simply a fading strategy. Farmer titans are flatlining, or frankly, doing much worse. Ch&G Marine Paints, for example, saw a catastrophic revenue shrinkage of over 60% in 10 years. Companies like Taiho, Ch&G, and Poly have all seen obvious steep declines. And even AkzoNobel, who, yes, still holds a top 3 global spot, they've essentially seen zero real growth over the past decade. The old model of just eating the dividends of a traditional European market, it's just not working anymore.
And it actually gets even more dramatic. We are seeing established giants like Henkel and Sika drop out of the top 10 entirely. Valspar, like we mentioned earlier, literally disappeared by being absorbed into Sherwin-Williams. This proves that historical dominance offers absolutely no protection against modern capital consolidation. No one is safe.
Which brings us to our next major shift, China's global market rise.
We are looking at a massive geographical shift right now. Chinese domestic brands are rapidly transitioning from being just low-end volume producers into serious global contenders. Back in 2015, the US was the absolute dominant force, with 29 companies on the top 80 list, and Europe was really strong too. China, they only had about 3 companies make the global top 80, generating maybe $1.5 billion. Fast forward to 2025, and the number of European and American companies on that list is visibly shrinking. Meanwhile, the total number of top-tier Chinese enterprises tripled to more than 9, and their combined revenue nearly quadrupled to $5.8 billion in just 10 years. They are fundamentally shifting from high volume to true global competitiveness.
The biggest standout of this trend is SKSH. In 2020, they entered the global top 20 for the very first time. By 2025, they had climbed to number 13 globally, essentially doubling their revenue from $1.1 billion to $2.3 billion. That speed is just incredible, and it makes them the only Chinese brand to crack the global top 20 right now. Now, obviously not every Chinese brand is succeeding, some have dropped off the list entirely, but the overall upward trend of these domestic brands breaking technological barriers and moving up market is completely undeniable.
So, how do we make sense of all this? Let's look at winning the next decade.
How do industry leaders actually position themselves for the next 10 years? Based on the hard data, the core survival strategies are pretty clear. First, aggressive M&A will continue to squeeze the middle market. It's practically mandatory for top-tier survival now, which means independent mid-sized brands are going to face immense pressure. Second, dominating the APAC region, specifically China, India, and Southeast Asia, is non-negotiable if you want high growth. Third, traditional European reliance leads to stagnation. The old giants are under heavy pressure. And finally, Chinese brands are accelerating their high-end global expansion. The center of gravity for the entire industry has firmly and maybe permanently shifted from the west to the east.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, somewhat provocative thought. With capital consolidating so aggressively at the very top, and massive regional shifts redefining global demand, in an era of $88.5 billion consolidated giants, can mid-sized independent brands even survive the next decade? Or is being acquired their only endgame? It's something every single professional in this space needs to think about. Thanks for joining me, and keep analyzing those numbers.